People often ask me when I've spoken about Jesus within his historical context, or Paul within the wider world of the Greeks and the Romans, how can we learn about this world? How can we get there ourselves? I, after all, had the privilege of studying ancient history as an undergraduate and studying theology in the Jewish world at graduate level, and most people don't have that privilege. Most people don't live in a city like I am in here, with some of the great libraries in the Western world literally just down the road, and a few similar books on my own shelves. So if you don't have that, then there are some things you can do. I always tell people they should read Josephus. Josephus is available now in Penguin Classics and similar popular translations. And the shorter books of Josephus, the Jewish War, and even his autobiography, they will tell you a huge amount about the world of Jesus' day. Now, Josephus, he's not infallible. He's a funny old stick in some ways. I suspect that if I met him, I probably wouldn't like him. I think he's a bit arrogant. I don't trust him on everything. But the thing is, he was there. He was in Galilee in the 50s and 60s. He lived for quite some time in Jerusalem. He went and became part for a while of one of the communities saying their prayers down in the desert. And he writes about that. And in particular, he knew about the kingdom of God movements of the day. And he knew what happened when Jerusalem was attacked and destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. He was right there. He knew the key players. He saw what was going on. And I found the first time I read through Josephus that scales fell from my eyes. I found myself thinking, this is how people were thinking in the 50s in Jerusalem when Paul came back from his missionary journeys and ran into these debates and these puzzles, and this is why they misunderstood him, and so on and so forth. So I would always tend to start with an actual text, and Josephus is accessible. You can buy a paperback version of that, and almost anyone should be able to read it reasonably easily in a good modern English translation. But when you pull back from that a bit, as you must, then it's important to get the larger historical sense. What was actually going on? Who were the Herods and why did they come to power when they did? Because Herod the Great, as we call him, the one who died around the time shortly after Jesus' birth, he wasn't nobly born. He just happened to be the biggest warlord around, the biggest thug, and the Romans liked local thugs because they could work with them. But you see, even that information is something you mightn't necessarily know from reading the New Testament, and so on and so forth. So in order to help you get into all of that, I and others have written quite a lot about the world of Jesus' day. My colleague Michael Bird from Australia did an amazing job pulling together a lot of stuff from my works into a book which he and I then co-authored called The New Testament in Its World, which has lots of pictures and charts and timelines and goodness knows what, and also lots of online resources, including Mike Bird and me discussing some of the key issues. And I know that several people have already found that very helpful. That just came out a few years ago. And in my book, The New Testament and the People of God, which is a book I wrote for my own students, wanting them to have it as their starter kit before they began their undergraduate studies, there's a whole section in the middle of that book about what precisely that world was like. And so often there are things in that world which are quite opaque to the average modern European or American student or ordinary church member. For instance, the temple in Jerusalem. When I was growing up, I thought of the temple just like a big church on a street corner, or maybe even a cathedral in a city. But it really wasn't like that at all. The temple in Jerusalem was this vast complex with courtyards and extra buildings and so on, as well as the central shrine. And the important thing was, the Jews really believed that this was where heaven and earth met. This was the one place on the planet where you could go to be in the very presence of God. Of course, some Christians have thought similar things about churches, but many Christians don't actually think that way about church buildings, in some ways perhaps wisely. And so it's at moments like that that we have to say we need to think into their world, so that when Paul says you are the temple of the living God, you realize he's not just saying you're like a church on the street corner. He means you are now one of these extraordinary places where heaven and earth meet. That's just a tiny example, but there are many, many more. get into the world of the first century and you will find floods of light shed on everything from actually from Genesis to Revelation, but certainly from Matthew to Revelation in the New Testament.